Paper Mario Color Splash is one of the biggest donkey fucks in the history of Mario games. Now, of the two dipshit additions to the Paper Mario series, this one is generally considered to be the better one. It's like the halfway point between a traditional Paper Mario game and Sticker Star, but sadly, it's much closer to Sticker Star. Now, the best games always have a brilliant opening. You remember in Paper Mario 1 where within 10 minutes of the game starting, Bowser uses the Star Rod to fucking burn you alive and throw you out the window? Remember Thousand Year Door where Goombella gets mugged by this weird death cult? Or Super Paper Mario where this weirdo comes in and absorbs everyone into a black hole? These games hooked you in early. They lit a fire in your soul to make you want to journey to the ends of the earth, uncover the mysteries of the world. Now, the story of Color Splash is insane. Now hold on to something, because this is gonna turn your entire life upside down. In Color Splash, the paint is gone. Oh no. But it gets even crazier, okay? Watch this. I'm about to blow your mind. Bowser did it. Yeah, I know. Crazy. Turns out, and this is kind of a big spoiler, so, skip to this time in the video if you don't want to hear it. But it turns out there's a bit of a twist. You see, Bowser just wanted his shell to look pretty and colorful, so he jumped into the paint fountain and spun around. But that mixed all the paint, which made it turn black, which is apparently bad because black paint is bad for some reason, which sounds just like racism to me. So anyway, that happens, and the black paint possesses Bowser with some kind of evil power which makes him want to paint the entire world black. So this whole game was just a giant Rolling Stones promotion the whole time. So yeah, that's the story. Bowser isn't even really evil, he's just a dumbass who happens to live in a world where black paint makes you insane. Yeah, you and me both, pal. The black paint isn't even some evil entity either, it just kind of exists, and it's bad for you. Like, that's the story? Some icky stuff that can be created in your basement by mixing some paint that makes people go sicko mode on everyone? Wow. People who fell in love with the stories, the drama, the atmosphere, and the lovable characters from the original trilogy will be happy to know that they just wiped their ass with that stuff and flushed it down the toilet so that fucking Huey can make a crack about paint every 2 seconds. Oh yeah, remember how in the first 2 games you had all these cool partners, Goombario, Bombette, Bo, Vivian, Koops, Kill, Fuck the Yoshi? Even Super Paper Mario had Boomer and Jim Carrey. In Color Splash, you get a paint bucket that just bitches and moans at you for the whole game. The biggest issue I have with this game's atmosphere is that it really goes out of its way to remind you that this is a paper game. Now, the worlds do actually look quite beautiful, the visuals are nice to look at, there are a lot of funny details, but they drive the paper point so hard that what little immersion you could have had into the game world is completely gone. Initially, the paper aesthetic was largely just that, an aesthetic. There were references to paper, Mario folds himself up into a paper airplane and rolls around on the floor, artifacts tear away and shit, but the universe went so far beyond that. There were unique, elaborate worlds with lovable, distinct, fleshed out characters and rich lore. Worlds had interesting backstories and distinct characters that complemented them properly. Each world told a story of its own that culminated towards the greater story. There are these grim-looking villagers who live in a land of perpetual twilight. There are a bunch of tourists from all kinds of places in Glitzville because it's a worldwide attraction. There are a bunch of down-in-the-dumps-looking Goombas in Rogueport because it's a shithole. There are all these adorable little punies who live in a colonized tree. Paper Mario 1 had the penguin guys in the ice level, the Yoshis on the island. There was this guy. There was Moustafa. Who could forget Moustafa? Super Paper Mario, there were these stupid cavemen that polluted the ocean, causing a war with the sentient plants who are dying. You go to hell, where you meet a princess, and bring her to heaven to, well, that's a really sweet part, so I won't spoil it. Color Splash is the same exact story told over and over again. There are Toads who are good guys, and then there's Shy Guys who are bad guys. But sometimes they shake it up with a Goomba or a Koopa or some shit. Peach sends you messages every now and then telling you what's happened, but it only tells you shit that you probably already figured out. Slowly, more details about Bowser's evil plan come to light. But it's never anything that surprising. Instead of having a unified game world with pipes leading to places and whatnot, the game uses this world map like Super Mario Bros. 3. Funnily enough, there's actually a part where you play through Super Mario Bros. 3 levels. It's one of the coolest parts of the game. I guess the map is more convenient, but it also doesn't help the immersion, and worlds feel a bit disjointed. I felt similarly about Super Paper Mario's door system, to be honest. What's up with the music? I mean, it's decent for the most part, and to be fair, the previous games left some pretty massive shoes to fill, so it's understandable. But what's with the fucking saxophone and fiddle? Why is it that every Mario game now has jazz music? I almost wonder if the music was always supposed to be that way since the beginning, and they just couldn't do it in the past because of hardware limitations. Come to think of it, I actually remember hearing that that was in fact the case. I don't remember where I heard it, mind you, but maybe it makes sense at least? I don't know. Either way, it's getting old for me. Color Splash just completely blows me away with the great lengths it goes to avoid being fun. Trying to have fun in Color Splash is like trying to look cool while you're taking a shit. You can kinda do it under very specific and particular circumstances, but you realize pretty quickly that you'd be better off in almost any other situation. Now, RPGs in general are a very repetitive genre because you kill enemies by entering a turn-based sequence where you both whittle each other down turn by turn. In the first two games, they made it more fun by adding additional action commands that improve attack power, and usually it didn't take that long. In this game, you have cards. Oh yeah, let's talk about the cards. You see, you can't just choose some attack and go. You have to collect cards on the overworld, which are your moves, which means that this is a Mario game where you can technically run out of jump. Not that that happens super often, because the game hands this shit out like candy, but you can only have up to 99 cards at a time, so you gotta make sure you fill up between levels. You also have to use paint to fill in the blank cards so they're more powerful. Now, people who defend this game go like, "Oh man, that's a smart mechanic, it makes you think like a tactician." Honestly, no, not really. At least not that much more than the original games. Since the game showers you with cards and money, which you can use to buy cards, the only real danger is running out of paint, but even that almost never happens because there are usually environmental things that you can smack with a hammer a billion times until you fill up. None of this is to say you can play like a moron. You can't. You have to think about what you're doing, but you'll rarely have to worry about resources. You know, unless fucking Magikoopa shows up. That's the only time the battles are genuinely challenging, is when Magikoopa shows up randomly to fuck with your cards. Yes, there is a random chance for Magikoopa to just show up and fuck with you, and this can happen at any time with no warning. Also, every time he shows up, he makes it impossible to run from the fight. Not that that ever actually works under normal circumstances anyway. TTYD had RNG elements too. Set pieces would fall on you or the enemy, fog would come in, the slot machine could make or break you if you weren't careful, but there were countermeasures like super guarding and putting your partner up front like a dickhead. Not in this game though. They took one of the few shitty things about TTYD, the randomness, made it worse, and put it in the game. I can't even be mad about that. A move of that magnitude takes balls of titanium. Whenever you get into a fight, you have to scroll through all your attack cards on the Wii U gamepad and then drag them to the center of the screen, fill them up with paint to make them more powerful, and then flick it upwards. Then you do the action command. If you're gonna have move cards instead of a regular battle system, the least they could do is just give you a menu of all the cards you have and how many of them you have. Like this. This would have been so much better. In the time it takes to do that first part of the first fucking turn, a TTYD battle would have already finished. Not to mention the moves don't tell you the action commands either. You have to go to the first world to learn the action commands at the dojo. Granted, they're incredibly easy once you learn them because every attack is just hitting the A button at the right moment. Literally, every attack. Basically, Color Splash is a game that is designed to waste your fucking time. It's so frustrating that sometimes I'll start intentionally whiffing action commands just to cut a battle shorter. The only battles that are genuinely challenging are boss fights that you need a special item for, which you might not even realize until you waste half your cards trying to kill them. You see, in a good game, a boss fight will fuck you up the first time, but then you learn their patterns and exploit them. In Color Splash, you either have the special item that beats the boss and makes you win, or you don't have it and you fucking die. It's such a patronizing way of making the game seem more challenging than it actually is, and it's so frustrating because you could actually be kicking the boss's ass for half the fight, and it's just like, oh, sorry sweetie, you don't have the right item. Remember the iron clefts in TTYD where they were untouchable until Killfuck's egg hatched in between battles? In this game, every boss fight is like that. Again, it's a fucking time waste, and once you realize that you don't have the right item, you have to run away, which doesn't even fucking work half the time, because unlike the old games where it was based on your actions, it's just random chance. It just amazes me that this game de-emphasizes so many elements of RPGs except for the bad ones, like RNG-based mechanics. And also, Magikoopa, like I said earlier. Basically, the only times you die is because you're being a genuine moron or because of random shit. Speaking of chance and random shit, the game has these bonus levels called Rochambeau temples, or Rochambeau, I don't know. In these temples, you can earn a bunch of coins and sometimes a rare card. And guess what? It's rock, paper, scissors. Seriously, that's what they came up with. Now fortunately there are hints for who will pick which card, and for many of them early on, it's the same each time. But seriously? Rock, paper, scissors? Is that a joke? By the way, what's the deal with rock, paper, scissors anyway? How does paper beat rock? I understand that paper covers rock, but what does that accomplish? It doesn't hurt it. Seriously, try destroying a rock with a piece of paper. No bullshit. Go to my Twitter and send me a video of you destroying a rock with a piece of paper. I'll wait. There's no leveling up in this game. Well, not in the conventional sense anyways. The enemies drop this hammer power, which if you get enough of it lets you hold more paint, and in between every big star you get a health upgrade, then once in a blue moon you get an upgrade that lets you draw more cards per turn. Then of course there's this part, the obligatory quiz section from every Paper Mario. In the old games, the quizzes often revolved around details about the characters, the world, and the lore, but since Color Splash doesn't have any of that, they decided that instead, you gotta guess the cards. Wow, great job Nintendo, real innovative. You're shown cards on the screen, but you can't just identify them. You have to have the cards to answer correctly, and if you don't have them, you have to just fucking die. Fortunately, there's a shy guy just outside the quiz area that sells you all the right cards for $1,000. But it's such bullshit because if you answer wrong once, you might not have the right cards for future questions because you spent them on the wrong answer earlier. Color Splash can't even do fucking quizzes correctly. It's almost as though this game is just a bunch of shitty WarioWare games grafted onto Paper Mario. At least you can afford to get a few wrong answers before dying. Until later in the game, where you have to go back and do the quiz again, and get all 7 questions perfectly in order to get access to a fucking bonus round, just so you can get a necessary item to beat a boss. Color Splash's idea of fun is, yo, let's take the worst parts of the game and make you do it more than once. Genius! That's the spaghetti, kid! Later I discovered that some levels have puzzles that have a tendency to unbeat themselves. After I got completely wrecked by the first actually cool boss fight in the game, I went back to the first world to buy more weapon cards, only to come back and find that half the puzzles had to be resolved. What the fuck kind of bullshit is that? Not to mention, a good chunk of the puzzles in this game revolve around you searching for these rescue toads. There are different groups of rescue toads, and each group serves a singular purpose. Only problem is they're scattered all over the world. It's almost like that part in TTYD where you have to run through the entire world searching for General White, but you're doing that for a good chunk of the game. So yeah, I've seen people complain about the backtracking in TTYD, which is legitimate. It does drag a little at certain points. But as far as I can tell, Color Splash feels like it's dragging the whole time. So yeah, for the second time, they took one of the few bad things about TTYD and made it worse. It's almost like a Metroidvania, except you don't get new abilities. Now, as many new assholes as I've ripped this game, it does have its strong moments. The writing is actually fucking great and sometimes even hilarious. Aside from the dumb paper jokes, there's also some seriously funny gags and dialogue. It's even got some weirdly political humor, which I was not expecting at all. Here's a Watergate reference. Here's a joke about fucking gun control. Seriously, I don't think anybody expected that in a Mario game. Apparently, there's even a joke about Orange Man. Yeah, it was 2016. Those were still funny back then. It's even weirdly lewd at times, like this part where you have to unclog a pipe with a plunger and it starts playing this fucking porno music. Like, what the fuck? You got these shy guys stacked up, perving on some boo who's taking a bath, which raises a shitload of questions. Some of the puzzle solving is actually pretty neat. You have to cut out pieces of the world on the Wii U gamepad, walk around in the background, and place giant thing cards that can do all sorts of crazy shit. The game, again, does manage to be somewhat atmospheric. In spite of the overbearing nature of the paper aesthetic, there are still really neat effects like the lighting and the paint splotching. Port Prisma becomes more lively as you go along, which gives you a nice sense of progression and accomplishment. The music on the world map gets more upbeat. There's some neat worlds too. There's this mansion that's stuck in a time loop like Majora's Mask. That's a cool level. There's the island, which transports you to a different dimension. There's this restaurant, which has a massive reservation, but they're all stuck at this temple where you destroyed the train tracks earlier. You had to fix the train tracks with toads so the train can get across, but then it gets crushed by a thwomp, so you have to roll it into the repair depot where you put it back together. Then they can finally make it to the restaurant. It almost reminds me of Banjo-Tooie, actually. Then immediately after that, you have to fight a fucking steak. This is oddly disturbing, actually. The music in general actually does get much better as you get further in the game, like the badass Train Factory music. And as much as I hate the boss fights, a few of them are admittedly kinda cool. There's a boss fight on a train, which is always good. There's Wendy, who attacks you to the beat of the music. It's even got some simple pleasures, like painting the blank spots with the hammer. They shower you with money and cards. The game does reward exploration, which is great. I just wish there were more specialty items that weren't easily replaceable and disposable. As you get further in the game, some enemies can be insta-killed on the map with a first strike, which is godsend. To be completely honest, I don't really despise this game to the core of my existence. I did actually enjoy it at times. It definitely sucks as a Paper Mario game, and even ignoring the rest of the series, it's fucking painful to play a lot of the time, but there are redeeming qualities to it. But I feel like if you're gonna have asinine gameplay, you should at least have a really nice story to keep you wanting to play further, and vice versa. If T2ID had the card system but the story was the same, I'd probably still play it, though maybe not quite as often. If this game had traditional Paper Mario mechanics, I might be more willing to play this game in the future. But this game just isn't strong enough in the respects of story or gameplay. It's just missing those beautiful masterpiece moments that the older games had, those climactic eruptions and those emotional scenes. This might not be the biggest pile of garbage I've ever played in my life, but it is a deeply frustrating experience, and I would strongly advise player discretion, patience, and yoga. At best, this game is several leagues below the original trilogy. At worst, it's an insult to them. Nevertheless, the writing is top-notch, it's got some funny moments, and some nice music. It's so frustrating because you had to put up with all this bullshit to get to those moments. Bottom line, Color Splash might not suck dick, but it definitely sucks ass.